And welcome to Spencer's Library. I'm Claudia, and in this video I'm going to be in conversation with Marilyn Maya Mendoza. She runs the booktube channel The Baby Boomer Booktuber, and she actually started that channel last year on her 70th birthday. I've enjoyed her content a lot, so I wanted to talk to her about it, about her booktubing journey, about her reading, about her life, about her writing, and many other things. So her channel is going to be linked in the description box, and I really urge you to check it out. She's a really unique booktuber and with a lot of very interesting perspectives. And if you want to hear more about her interesting perspectives, then I hope you enjoy this interview as well. So you started your booktube channel on your 70th birthday, which was in August of last year.
Right. I love to do something exciting every decade. And when you're 70, you should do something big. And I started looking through YouTube and saying, there's people who love books. Why wasn't there something like this when I was young? But I said, it's never too late. So I started on my 70th birthday. And I'm really happy because I've met so many wonderful people. I'm pretty zany, and I'm getting into what booktube is about. And I think that the friends I've made is the most important part of booktube.
The way that you connect with people, at the other, literally the other end of the world, that you just don't really get, at least from my experience, I don't really have many people in my life that I can talk to about books.
I never had people that I could talk to about books. This was the story of my life. I was considered very weird for being a reader all my life, whether I was in Brooklyn, New York, or, Waianae, Hawaii, Makaha, Hawaii. Reading wasn't, something that was valued, but it was valued by my mother. She was a voracious reader, and she taught me how to read at like age 2. Books are wonderful. I didn't care what other people thought. But now that I have a chance to talk to people about books and comment, it's wonderful.
I'd like to know more about your sort of reading life. So you said you started to read really, really early, and your mum was the main influence on that?
Yes, she bought me what they called golden books at when I was like 2, when she would read to me. And by the time I was like 2.5, I was already memorizing and reading, reading along. So yeah, I was reading at a very young age. We were pretty poor. So when she bought books, she really wanted me to learn how to read. That was a big thing in her life, was to do right. My mother was Jewish and my father was Puerto Rican, and he had a different view about reading. He thought it was worthless. So I'm so happy that I had at least someone who thought books were worthwhile. I mean, my father was great, don't get me wrong. He was more into music, dancing, and that's also part of my character, what I bring to booktube, which might not be so appreciated, but it's part of me. So far, I've read poetry, I've danced, I've sang, I've danced with a cane, I did all kinds of things. And it's not like I'm trying to entertain people. It's just who I am.
Don't put yourself down. I very much appreciate your intros. For those of you who have not seen one of Marilyn Maya's videos, the intros alone are worth it. Because the dancing, there's music, there's like visuals, you've got amazing like dresses and hats and everything. I very much appreciate those.
So someone mentioned my outfit and they said, you look suffragette chic. And I don't know if that was a compliment, but I took it as a compliment. I just love dressing up. I guess I don't have chances to do that. And people don't think that older people, and this is something that I want to bring to you too, that older people can be just as lively and as childish and love books in a different way. We don't have to be very, staid and very serious. We can still have good comments and, like you said, thoughts about books at the same time. And that's what I hope I bring to BookTube.
I think you do, and you're one of the most sort of widely read booktubers that I follow. You really read a lot of different genres, a lot of different time periods. Has that always been the way, or have your tastes sort of changed over the years that you've been a reader?
Yes, when I was a child, I haunted the fairy tale section. I mean, my favorite fairy tale was Snow White and Rose Red. It's a Grimm tale, I'm sure you know.
Oh, I love it,
And
yeah.
it's my favorite fairy tale because they were sisters. And I didn't have anybody to play with, really. I was an only child of my mother and father. I was the Snow White one. And I would imagine that Rose Red was this exuberant side of me and the exuberant friend that I wished I had. So that's my favorite. So I loved fairy tales, and I loved Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen, and The Little Match Girl made me cry, still does. So I do love fairy tales, but I think I might have overdosed on fairy tales because I don't like fantasy too much. And I think it just takes too long for me to get into the world building. Maybe I'm impatient, I don't know. That's one genre that I'd like to get into if I can find the right book. And I always know that there's always the right book. So in my 20s, I was reading a lot of mysteries. I still do, because they're an escape for me. There was something going around BookTube, a tag. Is reading an escape, a learning experience, or something else? I can't remember what it was. And I think it's all three, but for everyone, it's different. You know, it's a little bit more. For me, it was always an escape first and foremost. Yes, I learned so much, but I needed an escape. I came from a family that was chaotic in a lot of ways, and my mother had a mental illness. I needed to get away from my home life. So reading was just a wonderful way of, in the beginning, fairy tales, and then all kinds of books. So I read a lot of nonfiction. I'm getting into more literary fiction, and I also read Victorian fiction.
You talk about so many different books, and often within the same video, you talk about different books on a topic or on a theme. And I really like that about your channel. And I think that's where it really helps that you have many more decades of reading experience than almost everyone else on BookTube. Because, you know, I could talk about books I've read in the last 20, if I'm stretching it, 25 years. But you have this whole wealth, you've got this entire library in your head, basically, and you can pull from that. And that's just really fascinating to watch.
It's really interesting when I hear people talk about Rebecca as, oh, I just found this new book, Rebecca, or I just found this Pride and Prejudice, or Little Women, which is becoming really popular on YouTube. And I'm thinking, did I read that when I was like 11? Or Gone with the Wind? I mean, I've read, you know, thousands of books in my life, I think. Luckily, I have a good memory. So I do like rereading, but there's so many books and so little time. So I really pick and choose which book I'm going to reread.
If I bought every book I saw on BookTube and liked, I would never get to any of them, really.
That's true. And I think that's one of the problems of BookTube, in a way, of being a creator, is that you hear so many suggestions. I don't have a lot of money to buy all these books. I have a good library. You have to read all the books too. And I found that I was beginning to start hoarding books and say, oh, I didn't read that one. I didn't read that one. I think that was a difference in BookTube, because I always bought one book at a time, or borrowed a book from the library, read it, then went back for one more.
That's the ultimate BookTube experience, by the way, is you start BookTube, you buy every single book you can get your hands on, and then eventually you're there like, well, I guess it's my time to do an unhaul video.
I did one unhaul video already, and it was my first ever unhaul. That was interesting, because I don't think I've ever done that in my life. I've been talking about a book that my mother liked that I bought. It was called The Ginger Tree. My mother loved that book, and it was the only present I ever gave my mother that she said, I love that book. And it was about an English woman who goes to Japan and China, and she lived through so much in Japan, and she ended up leaving her husband. And it was a very interesting, it was more of a historical fiction book, which I don't really read. And I don't know how I got that book, but my mother really, really enjoyed that book. And that meant so much to me, when you give a book to someone and they actually enjoyed it. That's how I feel about BookTube. Maybe I have a book in my library that someone else might really find interesting.
I often get tagged on Instagram posts where people have read books that I recommended, and it's always amazing. It's always a great feeling when someone talks about a book that you recommended them and they enjoyed it.
I was talking about to someone else about a series that I did on mental health when I first started, and no one watched it. It was, Mental Health Mondays. And I thought I had this great idea. We were going to study this book, and I was going to help everybody who also dealt with anxiety disorders. But for some reason, it didn't fly. I still have not given up on that, because I think that, one thing about being a creator on BookTube is that you notice that people have problems. And if you have suffered with something, and I suffered from agoraphobia all my life and panic attacks, and you found a book or a couple of books, and I found The Four Agreements, and that's by Don Luis Miguel. And that's what we were studying. Maybe it was my fault. I didn't do it the correct way. That's one of my projects, is helping other people with their mental health problems. Another one is to introduce people to older writers that are older women like myself, because I'm also a writer.
When things don't work on BookTube, it's so random sometimes, because there are so many videos where I'm really pleased with the video and I'll upload it and no one watches it. And it's just the randomness of how YouTube works. I hope you continue with the Mental Health Mondays. I really think, like you said, it's an important thing to talk about, and also something that maybe people won't have the chance to talk much about offline. And so the online becomes a really important space for this kind of exchange.
I think so. And from the comments that I've gotten, a lot of people who are either listeners, who are not creators, they find it hard to talk to people in real life. So, they go to BookTube or YouTube to find a person who they can connect with. And I think that's a lot of what's making YouTube explode. I can't tell you how many people, when I talk about my issues of either my physical issues, I use a cane. And in one of my videos, I danced with a cane, which was a little bit weird, but I do what I have to do. How many people have told me, oh, I also suffer from anxiety. Oh, I haven't left my house in this long, and I'm able to give them advice that way. And so comments are so important. I love to comment on other people's videos. It's one of my pleasures. And I don't have a full-time job. So I have the time to really make long comments. I continue to do so, even though I'm a creator.
So you mentioned your memoir, which was published a decade ago. Is that right? 10 years ago?
Yes, it went out of print. It was called From Agoraphobia to Zen. It was published by a small UK, of all places, from Hawaii to the UK. And they sort of went out of business, and they took a lot of their books out of print. And I was happy to have it out of print, because I'm writing a second memoir. I also write poetry. I write memoir. I write nonfiction, blog posts, poetry, memoir. That's my thing. I'm not saying I'll never write fiction in my life, but I try to write memoir like fiction, but yet being true. Memoir is a very hard genre to write well. And I don't know if you've read many memoirs. A lot of them are what they call rubbish. You have to be a little bit far apart from the incidents that happen to you in your life. And it doesn't matter about what age you are. You can write a self-indulgent memoir at 80, and you can write a good memoir at 20. I'd like to think I wrote a good memoir, and from the feedback I got, and believe me, there was no editing going on in that company. So I had to learn to edit. And that was a very hard thing for me to learn.
But the second memoir that you're working on right now, is that going to be a revised version of the first, or is it going to be a continuation?
No, it's not either one of those things, because my memoir is sort of an autobiography rather than a memoir. You're told by literary agents, don't do this. But if you do it right, you have interesting characters going on, and, you're able to make a full picture of it. I think you can do. I'm not going to do the end of my life. I'm still alive. I have a different theme this time. And the theme, and this is not the title of the book, it was going to be pretty ugly. The magical life of a trauma survivor. I still might keep the second part of it, but someone else wrote the book pretty ugly. The theme of it is how we feel about ourselves, what people tell us about ourselves as children, and how we bring that along with us through our life, and how it can take us to terrible places, but it can also bring us into a magical place where we make up our own stories and we develop ourselves to be different people than what was maybe planned for us.
That sounds really fascinating. So at what stage are you at with the writing and editing?
I wrote the whole memoir. I mean, I started writing it as soon as my book went out of print, which was maybe 5 years ago. Editing it now, and I'm trying to find the correct ending, which is very hard. Like I said, when you're still alive, you know, you want to make sure that the climax is going to be satisfying, as well as the denouement of the book. That's the hardest part. I didn't want to write a dear, what do they call that? Mommy dearest type of memoir, where my mother is the evil stepmother queen. No, it wasn't like that. I thought the best way of overcoming that was to have her own voice in the memoir at her time. And how did I do that? Not only do I have a good memory, because you have to, memoir memory, but also I have her writings, her letters, conversations that I had with people in her past, and also conversations with her that I put in. So I ended up starting my mother's memoir in the 1930s. And it was a story that my aunt told me about what happened to my mother in the 30s. And then we go into my life, my timeline. And hers is a smaller, it's not going to be like one chapter hers, one chapter mine, but it's going to be more little things, you know, just little tidbits, what she went through during her life and why she was like how she was. I come from two backgrounds that came from different places. So.
And you carry on both identities, both in your videos and I expect in your life as well.
Yes, and that has been a difficult thing. A really good book that I read this year was called Quicksand, and it's by Nella Larsen. And she wrote Passing, which is a very popular book on BookTube. But I related more to Quicksand than I did with Passing, because she had, Nella Larsen, I'm talking about the author, had a very difficult time trying to come to terms with being both Black and white. And I had the same feeling that I didn't know who I was. Was I Puerto Rican? Was I accepted by Puerto Ricans? Sometimes. Was I Jewish? I wasn't really accepted there either. I was half Jewish. So I was half Puerto Rican, half Jewish, not a complete person. And that's the way I felt during my life, and why I did such unusual things, like traveling all over the world when I had no money and things like that. And when I was young, you know, in the 50s, there weren't many people who were half Jewish and half Puerto Rican. Now it's like, you know, multicultural, that's a thing. But I remember even my Puerto Rican friends saying, she's half Jewish and half Puerto Rican. Isn't that weird? You know, I had to put on a lot of different characters in my life. And then I realized, who am I? I have to be authentic to myself, and finding that out is a wonderful thing.
And I guess you had to find that out by yourself, because if you were an only child, you didn't have siblings that shared the same upbringing and the same family.
That was also difficult, and probably why I liked Snow White and Rose Red so much, because I always wanted friends. And that's why BookTube is so great, because I don't have many friends in real life. I have one good friend who I know in Hawaii for 30 years or longer. And a lot of my friends, unfortunately, are passing away. So there you have it. I mean, I'm losing people like, you know, weekly, it seems. So BookTube is so important to me, and for so many reasons.
Yeah, I'm glad that we can connect, you know, via the internet. But
Yes.
Something I'm interested in as well is you live in Hawaii now. You said you've been there for 30 years.
40 years.
40 years. How did that move happen?
Oh,
what brought you there?
Yeah, I'm editing this chapter. I saw the movie South Pacific when I was 12. I said, wherever this is taking place, I'm going to move there. And all my friends, they said, right, sure. And at the end, at the end, the credits roll and it said, filmed in Kauai, Hawaii. I said, that's my place. It turned out that wherever you go, there you are. You bring your problems along with you. And I was always looking for that place, that special place that I would go to. All my problems would be solved, but it doesn't work that way. You have to solve your own problems.
That's right. But you moved to Hawaii without ever having visited before?
Yes, a
Wow.
one-way ticket, no place to live. I had saved $1,000, which I thought was a lot of money, which it was really at that time. 2 children with me, don't forget that, And all my friends in New York thought it was the craziest thing that I had ever done. And but I didn't see it that way. I said, this is it. I'm going to be in Hawaii and no more cold weather, because I suffered from fibromyalgia since I was like in my 20s. Well, things happened. I think I got married within 2 months after I came here, because, I used to do things like that, just jump into things, and that's sometimes good and sometimes not so good. The people that went to my aloha party, they said, you'll be back in 6 months tops, because there's rats over there. The place is full of rats. And I was saying, I don't know why they keep on saying that,
Surely there's rats in New York City as well.
Oh, a lot of rats in the subway, especially.
When I moved from Germany to the UK, everyone said the exact opposite to you. They said, oh, she's never coming back. That's it now, she's gone. And yet here I am 7 years later back in Germany, because I realized that actually this is where I belong and not there.
Yeah, that's your place of Ithaca, where you belong. I don't think I can ever go back to New York again. I think it's just been too many years that I've been gone. But I don't say that Hawaii will be the forever place for me. I never think that way. It's good for, so far I feel happy here. But I've left Hawaii to get my degree. I went to Minnesota. I lived there for 5 years. I worked in the as a prosecuting attorney's liaison, because I spoke Spanish. And I've had many experiences moving to different places. I've lived in Japan and the Philippines, so I guess, now that I'm older and I can't get around as well, and I say, oh, darn it, I wish I can go to Rome, and see Rome, once. But I don't think I can, because of all the hills and the cobblestone streets. But I say, I am not giving up. I'll find a way.
Yeah, I hope you get to Rome, because it's definitely worth seeing. It sounds like you've passed this love of travel on to your children as well. I mean, you said you took 2 children with you to Hawaii. How old were they at the time? What did they make of all of that?
Well, they were young enough to really appreciate it. I mean, they weren't, stuck to New York. I mean, one was only 3 years old and one was 7. So they were brought up in Hawaii. They feel like locals. Let's put it that way. And then I got married, had 2 more children. And so my 2 younger children are Filipino heritage, having children who are bicultural, biracial, living in Hawaii where it's not a problem really. I lived in Minnesota and I did bring my children there, and they experienced prejudice over there because people didn't know what they were. And the first day of school, someone said to my daughter, "How?" And she said, "What does that mean?" And it was a slur against Native Americans. She didn't understand. I hope that I taught my children that prejudice is never good and hatred is never good. That's what I hope my legacy will be.
I'm sure it will. Have you passed on your love for reading to your children as well?
I would say yes, but not in as big a way as I would have liked to. Of course, my daughter graduated college, so she had to read, and I'm still pushing books on her, and she reads, but not to the extent that I'm a reader. I would say 2 of my children are readers, and 2, maybe they read on YouTube or like that, but not like me, no. My daughter thought she wouldn't be able to get into college, for example, and I said, if you read, you will get into college. That's all you need to do. And she said, what? You know, and that reminds me of another story of how I was able to afford to go to Europe. And one of my neighbors said, I know you don't have money. How did you afford to go to Europe? And I told her, the library. And she said, what? I said, I read a book about how to go to Europe on the cheap and how to stay with people in host families and how to get a cheap airfare. And she just didn't believe me that a book could tell you all these things. And that's what's so wonderful about reading. And you're able to get out of your comfort zone, if that's your wish.
BookTube encourages getting out of your comfort zone. We were talking about memoirs, and I don't really read memoirs, and the ones that I've read, I haven't really enjoyed. But I'm still going to give it another try until I find one that I like. And I'm sure it's going to be the same with you in fantasy literature, that maybe, you know, there will be the recommendation for you, something that you really get into, and then you've already expanded your horizon into a particular direction.
I never say never. So I do read a lot of other genres. And, you know, even though I write memoir, it's not my favorite genre to read, believe it or not. Because like I said, it's so hard to do well. And when you write something, you see the mistakes too. Oh, they shouldn't have done that. That wasn't good.
Yeah, you can't enjoy it purely as a consumer, I guess.
I have read memoirs that I like. Unfortunately, one that was very popular was Educated. I don't know if you read it, by Tara Westmeyer.
I wasn't that keen on it.
No, and you know what happened? I'll tell you why I wasn't keen on it either. And she tried so hard not to be self-indulgent that she made herself so far away from the reader that we couldn't feel for her. And I think that was the problem with Educated, though many people love it, don't get me wrong.
Is there a memoir that you've read that you think gets that balance just right?
There are memoirs that aren't said to be memoirs, like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which is fiction, but it's not fiction. And Betty Smith, the author, admitted that all of her books were autobiographical. Those are, to me, the best memoirs are maybe what you would call autofiction now. Though I can't think on the top of my head what a good pure memoir is. I know memoirs that I really hated. Unfortunately, they stick in your mind, like Running with Scissors. For some reason, that really irked me, that book. I don't know why. There was a book, A Child Called It. He had a sympathetic character that you felt for him. So that was maybe a memoir that I thought that did the Mommy Dearest a little better. And then there's also other books that I keep on thinking of books that I hated. Unfortunately.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. I just wondered if there was one that you were thinking of.
I was thinking of Eat, Pray, Love, which I also didn't like. So I'm sure there were memoirs that I liked. I just can't think of them right away.
That's okay. So what's next for your BookTube channel? Oh, I've also just realized I haven't actually mentioned that your BookTube channel is subtitled The Baby Boomer BookTuber.
Yes.
Which, if I may say, is one of the best channel names on BookTube.
I'm really good at titles.
It's a very, very good one, because you're playing with the expectations of what millennials think baby boomers. You know, we have an image in our heads.
Yes.
And your channel just completely smashes that. Yeah, and so great title, great channel name. What's next for the Baby Boomer BookTuber? Oh wow, it is a tongue twister.
Baby Boomer BookTuber.
That's it.
I think that I would like to, and I said it in my latest videos, that just collecting books for TBRs and hauls was getting me quite nervous and raising my stress level. And I've heard this all over BookTube lately, so I'm not the only person who feels this way. And people are saying, I'm not going to do any hauls anymore. I'm not going to do TBRs, but then they do, because those are the videos that get watched. I'm definitely going to be very careful about the readathons, where like March Mystery Madness, I went really wild. It's not good. It's not good for the watcher as well as the creator. You have to do something that you feel passionate about and not take it to the 10th level. And I think that's where your channel does it so well.
It takes a while though, because you do get swept away by all of the events. I got tired at one point of making TBRs and then not reading them, so I just stopped doing that. So it sounds like you're at that stage in your channel where you're trying to find the balance and trying to make the content that you are really passionate about.
Yes, I want to, I'm reading more widely too. I'm reading more literary fiction. Of course, I've read literary fiction in my life, but I never thought of it as like translated works and things like that. And, you know, I thought it was maybe too highbrow for me. I always put low expectations on myself. And they said, well, you have a college degree, you read all the time. Yeah, but I'm not that kind of person. I found out I love it. I love some, I don't love all the literary fiction that I've been reading, but yeah. So I'm branching out that way too, by watching other people videos who are suggesting books, and some of them I like, some of them I don't. But yeah, I want to read more literary fiction. I want to do more Victober. Right now I'm reading Elizabeth Gaskell on my Kindle. And my last video was regarding, well, it's funny also. I try to be funny, but I got a Kindle for Mother's Day, and I downloaded for free North and South, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. So
that's great. I read that one during a Victober and I really disliked it. And I'm not sure if I need to reread it because it sounds like my kind of thing.
I'm only on the 3rd chapter and I like it so far. So I'll let you know. It brings you into that Victorian period. And I read Anne Bronte for Victober last year, and I really enjoyed that.
Which one?
So
which one did you read?
I read both of them, both of her 2 books, Wildfield Hall, and what was the other one?
Agnes Grey.
Agnes Grey. I like both of them. Some people say if you like Agnes Grey, you're not going to like, well, you know, but I like both of them for different reasons. But I really enjoyed Anne Bronte. I think I enjoyed the, for example, the Jane Austen books that aren't as popular, like Persuasion and what is the other one?
Northanger Abbey?
Yes, yes. Yeah. I love those 2 the best, I think.
I know we're talking about how we don't do readathons anymore, but are you going to be participating in Jane Austen July this year?
Oh, definitely. I have to pick and choose, but Jane Austen July, we have to do that. I mean, like I said before, when I read that article in the magazine that said, Jane Austen will make you forget your problems, I read everything and it helped. So why shouldn't I join and reread Jane Austen? I would love it. I would love to join.
Just a little video suggestion. I would love to hear more of that story of you first reading Jane Austen. So maybe that could be a video for Jane Austen July. I personally would be really interested in hearing the details of that.
Definitely. Thank you for the suggestion. It's almost like, you know, a wind that, you go toward what the wind is. I enjoy the tags. I don't know if you do tags or not, but
occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy that because I get to talk about my favorite subject, me. No, but I enjoy tags. I enjoy chatting. I enjoy doing different things. So I hope that my channel becomes more popular. I do hope it does. Why not?
I hope so too. And I hope that everyone who's watching this is going to go check it out in the description box and, check out some videos. Which one video would you recommend to someone new to your channel?
Maybe a little literary tag is one, because people seem to like it. And also the first video on my 70th birthday is another one. Though I think I speak a little slower for some reason. I think I was just getting used to it, but I did tell a lot about my background. And I think people appreciated that. So that's why it has a lot of views compared to like not many views on my recent videos. But I'm still working that out. And I'm sure that as I make more friends and people will come to the corner of BookTube that we're on. Let's face it, we have to be honest. We're making BookTube videos for other people to watch them.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, this would just be like a private diary, wouldn't it?
Yes. In fact, in that little literary tag, I recited a poem that I wrote. If you wanted to hear a short poem that I wrote about my partner of 14 years, I'll be happy to show you that.
Go on.
Okay. about my glasses. I found you in the most unlikely place, on top of a mountain where clouds obscured you. You were in a fog of uncertainty. I was accepting fog. We entered in an unlikely space, you drowning in a river of unreality. I saved you to join my fantasy, images running through your mind, desiring love of a different kind. I brought you to a land of forgotten dreams, a paradise where the sky almost touches the sea. Both of us in unlikely places, hurt by likely persons. But that image you sent me of your eyes reached out to the center of my pain, and I knew I wouldn't be hurt again. And we took the plunge into the most unlikely place, where turbulent waves of emotions led us to peace and grace. Likely, but rarely lasting, yet it lives these 12 years to grow and give.
Beautiful.
Thank you. The poem is really about that my partner is 20 years younger than me. So that was unlikely that we would stay together this long, but we have. And he helps me. He helps me in my videos.
I was going to say you should give a little shout out to him because he's the producer behind the scenes.
Yes.
If I understand that.
Yes, he's a graphic designer. He's musical. He's great, and his name is Jackson, and he helps me. He does a lot for me, and I want to learn how to edit my own videos, and that's what I want to bring to BookTube in the future. I want to be able to become more independent of him. So because he has his own life and you know, making money and all that, I want to be able to make my own videos, edit my own videos. And that's my plan for my first year of YouTube. I mean, he does everything. I mean, he holds the camera. I mean, he does everything. I mean, all I do is just speak. And I think I can do more than that. I think I'm capable of it.
Well, I'm sure you are, but shout out to Jackson anyway. Thank you, Jackson, for, you know, making this all happen technically.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think we'll leave it there for the interview.
Yes.
So everyone, make sure you check out Marilyn Maya's channel, The Baby Boomer Booktuber.
Thank you, Claudia. I really appreciate it. And it's wonderful to talk to you in person.
Yes, definitely, because we've been, you know, typing for, what, a year now?
Yes, yes. 8 months, at least.
Amazing.
Yes. Thank you, Claudia. Bye.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Marilyn Maya Mendoza, the Baby Boomer Booktuber. I did manage to say it. And I hope you check out her channel, link in the description box. Watch her videos, give her comments, give her all the love. And thank you for watching. Bye.